What if you came home after almost a year away, and your wife handed you a baby that couldn't possibly be yours? Dorian Levesque returned after 11 months deployed, only to be gifted a 2-month-old baby. Everyone believed the fairy tale, except him. Silent, he investigated DNA tests, hotel receipts, hidden messages. And on the day of the baptism, before family, friends, and even the priest, he handed his wife an envelope, not for donation, but a lawsuit. The confrontation shattered their marriage and exposed a web of lies more elaborate than anyone imagined. Want to know the secret that froze an entire room and changed their future forever? Hear the full story now. I met Calista when we were both 25, just starting to carve out space in a world that didn't wait for anyone. She worked in interior design, and I was fresh into officer training. We weren't a storybook couple, but she had a gravity to her, a smile that disarmed, a wit that kept me honest, and eyes that said she knew more than she ever let on. We moved fast. Within a year, I'd proposed. I thought I was marrying my best friend. Deployment didn't scare us, not at first. We were disciplined, prepared. We agreed on everything: how we'd stay in touch, what we'd do when I returned, when we'd start a family. She even helped me pack, folded every shirt, tucked in little notes between my socks. "Hurry home to me," one of them said. It all felt real then. Solid. Like the kind of love that doesn't crack under pressure. But something changed the second I left. At first, her messages were long and heartfelt. She'd send voice notes, tell me about work, her dreams, the house renovations. Then they got shorter, less frequent. I chalked it up to stress, maybe even loneliness. I didn't want to be the jealous husband thousands of miles away, paranoid over silence. I trusted her. By month 6, something in her tone shifted. Her voice was lighter, but not with happiness, more like detachment, like she had found another version of herself while I was gone, one that didn't need to wait for late-night calls from war zones. I didn't question it. I couldn't afford to. My job demanded focus. I told myself we'd reconnect once I was back. But the first red flag didn't arrive through a message. It arrived through silence. 1 week before I was scheduled to return, she stopped replying altogether. No texts, no calls, nothing. Then, out of nowhere, a photo, a baby, wrapped in a powder blue blanket. The caption, "He can't wait to meet his daddy." I sat on the edge of my cot, phone in hand, heart pounding like I'd just stepped on a minefield. Daddy? I counted the months again. Backward, forward, I mapped it out on the screen with my finger like it would make a different answer appear. But it didn't. It was impossible. Biologically, logistically, and morally impossible. Unless she'd been lying. Unless something else had been going on. When I landed at JFK, she greeted me with a kiss and that same baby in her arms, smiling like the past year hadn't fractured every line between us. She introduced me to our son, as if the facts could bend around her fantasy. I kissed her. I took the baby in my arms, and I played along. The next few days were a blur. Friends dropping by with balloons and baby clothes, family hugging me tight, congratulating us. No one questioned the timeline. Why would they? I was the soldier returning from duty. She was the glowing new mother. It was a storybook ending everyone wanted to believe in. Except me. I slept beside her. I fed the baby. I kept my voice calm and steady while my hands trembled holding the bottle. I smiled for photos. And at night, when she drifted off, I stared at the ceiling and rehearsed the questions I'd never get honest answers to. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I called in favors. One from a friend in logistics who helped me get a private DNA test arranged. Discreet, fast, undeniable. One from a fellow veteran who had a brother working in cybersecurity. He helped dig into phone records, messages, email metadata. And one from an old friend at a law firm. I didn't say much. Just enough to get papers started. In case, I told him. But we both knew what in case meant. It wasn't about anger. I didn't want revenge in the messy, cinematic sense. I wanted clarity. I wanted my choices back. I wanted the life I'd built not to be hijacked by someone else's lies. It took 10 days for the DNA results to come back. I didn't even open the envelope at first. I just stared at it, willing it to rewrite what I already knew. But truth doesn't care about your comfort. He wasn't mine. The realization hit quietly, like snowfall in a forest. No crash, no scream, just a blanketing coldness that covered everything. And still, I waited, because something else had landed in my lap. The invitation to the baptism. Calista had planned it all. Venue, priest, cake, tiny white tuxedo. She even emailed out a song list. She wanted to celebrate a lie, publicly, joyfully. That's when I knew what I had to do. The day before the baptism, I stood in front of the mirror in a tailored navy suit, the same one I'd worn to our engagement party 3 years prior. Calista always said it made me look like a senator. I used to like that. Now it felt like armor. Sharp lines to protect a cracked interior. She fluttered around the house that morning, carrying the baby on her hip, directing florists over the phone, dictating seating charts to her sister. Her voice had that smug serenity of someone who thought the world had spun neatly back into her control. "Don't forget," she chirped as I buttoned my cuffs. "You're giving a speech before the baptism. Just something short and heartfelt." I smiled. "Of course." She kissed me on the cheek, then handed me a white envelope. "For the priest. Donation envelope. Don't forget to give it to him." I pocketed it without looking. There was something about her now. Something so performative, so polished, it made my skin crawl. Like she was playing the role of perfect mother, perfect wife, perfect liar. She didn't know I'd already met with the priest the day before. Didn't know that envelope would never reach him. The venue was a glass-walled chapel near the Hudson, filled with sunlight and white roses. It should have been beautiful. But all I could see were the carefully constructed lies blooming beside every aisle. Family from both sides, friends from our past and present. None of them knew they were extras in the closing act of a tragedy. As we arrived, Calista practically glowed. She wore a pale blue dress that cinched at her waist and spilled like water to her ankles. Her hair curled softly around her face, and she looked radiant. She always had a talent for looking the part. People came up to us with gifts, kisses, congratulations. I shook hands. I held the baby. I smiled for photos. And all the while, the legal envelope waited, sealed and waiting, in the inside pocket of my jacket. I'd chosen every detail of this moment deliberately. The timing, the place, even the song playing in the background. Hallelujah, on piano, slow and aching. Calista stood beside me, cooing to the baby as the priest began his greeting. "We're gathered here today to celebrate new life," he said. "And the bond of family." I thought of bonds, of trust, of vows spoken and broken, of months spent in desert heat, clutching letters from a woman I thought was waiting for me, of phone calls at 3 a.m. full of fake tears and made-up problems to mask her real secret. "Dorian, The priest called gently. "Would you like to say a few words?" Calista squeezed my hand. I stepped up to the microphone. I looked out over the rows of expectant faces, smiles, cameras, the quiet shuffle of a baby cooing. The world had slowed, and for the first time in months, I felt calm. Not the calm of peace, but of control. "Thank you all for being here today," I began, voice steady, "for supporting us, for loving our son, for honoring this moment." A few people nodded. Calista gave me an encouraging smile. "I've waited a long time for this day," I said. "Not just because it's the baptism of my son, but because it's the first time I've been able to stand in front of all of you, look you in the eyes, and tell the truth." The smile on Callista's face froze. Her fingers, resting lightly on the baby's blanket, twitched. This past year has been illuminating. While I was deployed overseas, defending our country, living every day not knowing if I'd make it home, there were things happening back here. Things I didn't know. I took a breath. The envelope in my pocket was suddenly heavy. I didn't know that the woman I loved, the woman I planned to marry, was seeing someone else. A few gasps. A soft murmur rippled through the room. The priest shifted uneasily. Callista's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. I didn't know that the baby we're celebrating today might not even be mine. Now the silence was deafening. Someone at the back coughed. The photographer lowered his camera. "But I do know this," I continued. "Lies only work in darkness. And today, in the light of this chapel, I'd like to shine a little truth." I turned to Calista. Her face had drained of all color. She stepped forward, whispering, "Dorian, stop. Not here." I looked down at our son, still peacefully asleep in her arms. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. "This isn't for the priest," I said, raising it slightly. "It's for you." Calista stared, her eyes wide. What is that?" "A subpoena. For full custody proceedings, for fraud, for infidelity, for paternity testing." The envelope was thick. Months of evidence inside. Screenshots, hotel records, a DNA test I'd secretly arranged when the baby was sick and needed blood work. It wasn't conclusive yet, but it was enough to raise questions. Enough to start. "You're insane," she hissed. "No," I said softly. "I'm awake now." I placed the envelope gently on the edge of the baptismal font. Then I looked out over the stunned crowd. "Enjoy the reception," I said. "I won't be attending." And with that, I walked down the aisle, past shocked relatives, frozen friends, the priest who could barely breathe. My footsteps echoed off the walls. Behind me, Callista's voice cracked into 1,000 sharp pieces. "Dorian, don't you dare walk away. You're humiliating me." I didn't turn back. Let the baptism be a beginning, but not the one she imagined. I drove for nearly an hour before pulling over at a quiet overlook, the kind where the city looks smaller than your pain. I sat with the windows down, the spring air creeping in like a balm over a burn. The rage was gone now. It had evaporated somewhere between the church steps and the turnpike. What lingered was something colder, quieter, resolve. Calista hadn't followed me. She knew better than to chase a man who walked away on his own terms. In the days that followed, my actions spoke louder than any of her screams. First, I cut all access. Her name was removed from the bank accounts. The joint apartment we shared, technically in my name, was locked. The movers I'd arranged beforehand packed up her things, labeled every box meticulously, and delivered them to her sister's doorstep with a note. "Please ensure she receives these." Next came the legal storm. I met with my lawyer, a woman named Adrienne, who'd seen more betrayal cases than most divorce courts combined. She looked at the evidence I had. Texts between Calista and the mystery man, timestamps overlapping with the final weeks of her pregnancy, the partial DNA report. "This is going to get ugly," she warned me. "It already is," I said. "I just want it to end the right way." We filed for temporary custody. Not full, yet. I wasn't going to punish the child for the sins of his mother. But I needed answers. I needed truth. The paternity test was pushed forward under emergency family court motion. Calista tried damage control. She showed up at my door crying, her mother in tow, holding the baby like a human shield. She begged, pleaded, accused me of cruelty, called it postpartum rage, claimed it was just a one-time mistake. But one-time mistakes don't have hotel receipts or a secret second phone. "You told him you wished I wouldn't come home," I said flatly. "That you hoped I died overseas." Her face crumbled at that. I didn't mean it. I was confused. I was scared. "You were gone so long. You could have told me," I said. "Before the baby. After. You had chances." She didn't speak after that. She just cried harder. But I wasn't moved. Not anymore. A week later, the DNA results arrived. I opened the envelope alone. A 99.7% not a match. The paper trembled in my hand, not because I was shocked. I wasn't. But because something fundamental cracked inside me. Not just trust, not just love. The illusion that I'd built my future on something real, that the woman I kissed goodbye before deployment was still there when I returned. She wasn't. And the child wasn't mine. But here's the twist. I didn't stop the case. I changed it. I filed for fraud, for emotional damages, and I pressed charges, not to imprison her, but to set a precedent, to show that this kind of betrayal had consequences, public ones. The baptism had been just the beginning. My silence had become my armor, my truth, my sword. And when Calista tried to paint herself as the victim on social media, posting soft-lit photos with captions like, "Trying my best as a mother," I didn't respond. I just posted one thing: the DNA results. No caption, no hashtags. The internet did the rest. The fallout was swift, faster than I anticipated. After I posted the paternity results, I didn't have to say much. The comment section exploded on its own. Old college friends, co-workers, mutuals we hadn't spoken to in years, they all weighed in. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was public. But I wasn't interested in drama. I wanted truth, closure. The DNA test had given me one answer. Now I needed the rest. Who was the father? Why the lies? And, most importantly, how long had this web of deception been spinning behind my back? I started where I always start when I want clarity, with silence and information. No accusations, no confrontations. Just questions I didn't ask aloud. Questions I let the facts answer. I called Lucia, a former military colleague who'd left the service to work in private investigations. We hadn't spoken in a while, but the moment I explained my situation, she was in. She didn't need convincing. "Send me what you have," she said. Names, dates, photos, anything. I forwarded everything. Flight itineraries Calista had booked, the name of the hotel she'd stayed in when I was stationed overseas, screenshots of texts, even photos of the child. Lucia worked fast. Within 3 days, she had narrowed down 3 likely candidates based on location overlap, known associates, and, most damning, Calista's phone records. One name stood out. Jesse Calder. Not just a casual hookup. Not just a stranger. A fellow Army spouse. A man I had met once at a barbecue, whose wife had served in the same unit I had. He'd shaken my hand and thanked me for my service while he was already sleeping with mine. Lucia confirmed it. She pulled surveillance from a roadside motel in Georgia, time-stamped just 2 weeks before my leave. She found photos from Calista's hidden Facebook album. One was blurry, taken in dim light, but unmistakable. Calista holding a baby bump. Jesse's hand on her stomach. The timeline matched. And then came the real kicker. Jesse had a sealed family court case in Florida. Lucia pulled what she could. Paternity issues, custody disputes. And now Calista's name appeared on recent filings, buried under an alias, but traceable. She hadn't just hidden the baby from me. She had tried to assign legal paternity to someone else entirely, then changed course once I returned. This wasn't a one-time affair. This was architecture, a system of lies, built brick by brick. When I confronted Calista with the findings, I didn't raise my voice. I just slid the manila folder across the table at a neutral lawyer's office. She didn't open it. Her face went blank, as if reading the air between us. "I wanted to tell you," she whispered. "But I was scared." "You were scared of being found out," I replied. She said nothing. I leaned forward. "You weaponized my absence. You used my silence. You built a life with another man and tried to pass the aftermath on to me." Her hands shook, but I didn't care. I had what I needed now, the full scope, and I wasn't done yet. Lucia's work was meticulous. She dug deeper into Jesse Calder's background, his financials, his social life. It was a web tangled with secrets that even I hadn't expected. Jesse wasn't just a man hiding an affair. He was a man with something to lose. A lot to lose. A history of shady business deals, unreported income, and most alarmingly, a series of unexplained absences that lined up suspiciously with Calista's pregnancies. Lucia found bank records showing large cash withdrawals and transfers from Jesse to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. There were also suspicious payments made to an unknown party in New York, which we suspected might be Calista herself or someone working on her behalf. Our next step was to track communications between Jesse and Calista. Lucia obtained a warrant to access phone and email records. The texts were cold, transactional, void of emotion, but heavy with urgency. "I need the money transferred today. No delays," one message read. Another, "Keep the story straight for the lawyers. No slip-ups." Calista was not only hiding the affair, but actively conspiring to build a financial safety net, possibly in anticipation of my return and the legal battles ahead. It was a chilling realization. On top of that, Jesse's wife had filed for divorce a few months earlier, but had agreed to keep the proceedings quiet, fearing public scandal. She too seemed to be wrapped in a web of deceit. I remember sitting in my apartment one night, overwhelmed by the layers of betrayal, not just by Calista, but by everyone who'd been part of this silent conspiracy. I poured a glass of whiskey, stared out the window at the city lights flickering against the night sky, and felt the cold grip of determination tighten around my chest. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Lucia's report was detailed. She provided timelines, locations, photographs, and even insider tips on how Calista and Jesse tried to manipulate the legal system. We compiled everything into a dossier that could stand up in court. But I wasn't ready to go public yet. There were still pieces missing. I decided to confront Calista again, this time armed with the damning evidence, but also with a strategic plan. I invited Calista to meet me one last time, in a neutral cafe downtown, away from prying eyes. The air was thick with tension before she even arrived. When she sat down, her eyes were tired but defiant. I didn't waste time. "I know everything," I said quietly, placing the dossier on the table between us. She glanced at it, her face pale. "Dorian, please." "Save it," I interrupted. "Your lies, your schemes, the betrayal. It's all here. The affair, the baby, the financial cover-ups." She looked away, ashamed. "I did it for us. For the baby." "For the baby?" I echoed, incredulously. "By tearing apart the family?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you'd never come back." "You thought wrong," I said. "And now, the truth comes out." We sat in silence, the weight of years crushing us both. I realized then that despite everything, a part of me still mourned what we lost. Not just the love, but the family we could have been. But mourning wouldn't fix the damage. Justice would. And that meant moving forward, no matter how painful. As I left the cafe, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. The road ahead was long, but I was ready to face it, with truth as my guide. The day the court hearing was scheduled, tension gripped me tighter than ever. I had prepared for months, gathering witnesses, documents, and evidence that would leave no doubt. Walking into the courtroom, I saw Calista sitting with her lawyer, her face a mask of forced calm. She glanced at me, eyes flickering with fear and anger. When the judge called the case, the room grew silent. I began by presenting the paternity test results. The judge listened intently as I detailed the timeline, the lies, and the emotional turmoil. Next, I introduced the financial records showing Calista's hidden dealings with Jesse Calder, including offshore accounts and suspicious transfers. The courtroom gasped collectively as the evidence unfolded. But the turning point came when I called Lisa Monroe, the wife of Jesse, to testify. Her words were sharp, filled with the pain of betrayal and the burden of secrecy. "I never wanted this," Lisa said, "but I couldn't stay silent anymore. They destroyed my family." Her testimony painted a vivid picture of the web of deceit that had ensnared us all. Calista's defense faltered. Her lawyer tried to discredit Lisa, but the damage was done. The judge deliberated, eyes heavy with the weight of the case. When the verdict was finally delivered, it was both a relief and a blow. Custody was granted to me, with Calista receiving supervised visitation rights. The financial penalties were severe: freezing of assets and restitution payments. As the gavel struck, I felt a mixture of triumph and sadness. Justice had been served, but the scars remained. Walking out of the courthouse, I noticed the press waiting, cameras flashing. I didn't say much, only a few words about moving forward, focusing on my son's future. Calista's face appeared on every screen, her reputation shattered. And Jesse Calder? He was nowhere to be found. The aftermath of the court ruling was more complicated than I had imagined. Calista vanished from my life, but her absence created a void filled with new challenges. Ethan, my son, struggled to understand the upheaval. At times, he was angry, confused, even withdrawn. The warmth we once shared seemed fragile. Meanwhile, the whispers around town began to echo louder. People took sides, and the workplace buzzed with gossip. Some colleagues sympathized with me, others quietly pitied Calista. I had to be both father and mother now, navigating the storm for Ethan's sake. At work, things weren't smooth either. The revelation of Calista's betrayal had rocked the company's foundation. Clients questioned the stability of our leadership, and some investors hesitated. Rowan, my trusted partner, stood by me, managing the crisis with professionalism and care. Together, we crafted a strategy to rebuild trust, reinforcing transparency and integrity. Meanwhile, Calista's own world unraveled. Lisa Monroe's decision to testify had cost her everything. Jesse's disappearance left her exposed, with no one to turn to. Rumors of financial ruin and emotional breakdowns swirled. I didn't relish watching her fall, but I knew it was the price of her deceit. In quieter moments, I reflected on everything lost and gained. The path of truth was painful, but it led me to a clearer understanding of what mattered. Ethan's laughter, his small hand in mine, was my anchor. I vowed to protect that innocence, no matter the cost. Months passed, but healing was slow, for both me and Ethan. I watched him grow stronger each day, his resilience inspiring me to keep moving forward. The scars of betrayal remained, but they no longer defined us. One afternoon, I received a message from an unexpected source. It was Lisa Monroe. She wanted to meet. Curious and cautious, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe, the same place where I had confronted Calista months before. Lisa looked worn but sincere. "I just wanted to say thank you," she began, "for standing up, for not letting them get away with it." Her gratitude was unexpected, but welcomed. We spoke about the damage, the losses, and the possibility of rebuilding. Though we had all been victims in different ways, it was clear the truth had set some things right. As we parted, I felt a sense of closure. My son's future was safe, and mine was beginning anew. I was no longer a victim. I was a father, a survivor, and a man with a plan. To build a life worthy of Ethan's bright smile. The courtroom battle was over, but the real challenge, the aftermath, had just begun. Walking out of the courthouse that day, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sorrow, and determination. Justice had been served in the eyes of the law, but the emotional scars ran deep and raw. Ethan, my son, was the most precious thing left to protect. His innocent eyes held questions I wasn't always ready to answer. The absence of his mother weighed heavily on him, sometimes manifesting as anger, other times as withdrawal. Each day, I saw the toll the betrayal and upheaval had taken on his young heart. I dedicated myself fully to being both mother and father, striving to build a stable and loving environment despite the storm raging around us. Sleepless nights were common, filled with worries about how to shield him from the harsh realities and rebuild his trust in family. At work, the ripple effects of Calista's deception continued to disrupt the company. Clients expressed doubts, and some investors pulled back. The betrayal was not just personal. It threatened everything I had worked so hard to build. But with Rowan's steadfast partnership, we fought back. We communicated openly with stakeholders, revamped policies, and emphasized transparency. Gradually, confidence returned. The company stabilized, becoming a beacon of resilience in the face of scandal. Yet every victory at work reminded me of the fragile personal battles still being fought at home. Calista's downfall was swift and public. Lisa Monroe's courageous testimony exposed the full extent of the deception. Jesse Calder's disappearance left a void where trust had once been. The news spread. Financial ruin, legal troubles, shattered relationships. Watching it all unfold stirred no joy in me. Rather, it underscored the cost of betrayal. In quieter moments, I confronted my own pain. The betrayal had cut deeper than I could have imagined. But through that pain, I discovered an unexpected strength. I began to understand that healing was not about forgetting, but about learning to live beyond the hurt. Therapy became a crucial part of my recovery. I had once viewed it as a weakness, but gradually, it transformed into a source of empowerment. Each session peeled back layers of grief, anger, and confusion, helping me reclaim parts of myself lost to betrayal. At work, I poured my energy into innovation and leadership. Rowan and I launched new projects that not only rejuvenated the company, but also reflected my renewed vision and resilience. The respect and trust regained among colleagues and investors became proof that adversity could be overcome. Vivian Kale, the steadfast ally who stood with me through the darkest times, became more than just a friend. Her unwavering support was a balm to my soul, and a reminder that trust and loyalty still existed in a fractured world. Together, we navigated treacherous waters and forged a path toward a stronger future. Despite progress, some wounds remained raw. Ethan's questions about his mother grew more frequent and piercing. I answered with honesty, tempered with care, knowing that shielding him completely was impossible. Yet protecting his innocence was vital. These conversations reminded me daily of the delicate balance between truth and tenderness. One evening, as we watched the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan's simple words struck a chord. "Dad, I want to be strong like you." His innocence and courage renewed my determination to be the father he deserved. The journey ahead promised more challenges, but with love and truth as our compass, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Time softened the sharp edges of pain, and forgiveness, though slow and sometimes elusive, began to take root. Not forgiveness for Calista or Jesse, but forgiveness for myself. Holding on to bitterness would have chained me to the past forever. Ethan's laughter and light filled my days, a living testament to resilience and hope. Embracing fatherhood anew, I committed to instilling values of honesty, empathy, and strength in him. Our shared rituals, Sunday breakfasts, bedtime stories, weekend adventures, became the threads weaving a new tapestry of family. Occasionally, whispers of Callista's continuing struggles reached me, but I no longer felt compelled to intervene or judge. My focus was on the present, the life I was rebuilding with my son. This journey taught me that even the deepest betrayals could lead to growth, and that survival was an act of courage. To those who hear my story, I offer this truth. Your past does not define you. It is the choices you make now, the strength to face reality, and the love you cultivate that shape your destiny. I am no longer a victim of betrayal. I am a survivor, a father, and a man determined to write a future of hope and integrity.